every student should have an art class. I think art helps us understand different cultures and different people, and it kind of opens your mind.
Hello everyone, today we have on a very special guest, Mr. Michael Farina. He is the band director at Carroll County High School as well as the band teacher. Mr. Farina, how are you?
I'm doing well, how are you?
Good, thank you. My first question is, when did you first discover your passion for music?
Well, growing up, my mom and dad had music going all the time, so I knew I loved it. And then my older sister was in the band, so I kind of watched and I knew I wanted to be a part of it. So my dad said, okay, we'll get you lessons before 6th grade when we started band. And I thought, okay, I'll play the trumpet. But when we walked into the music store, I saw this bright red drum set sitting in the corner, and something clicked, and I thought, okay, I need to do that. And then it was just from there. I mean, that's all I did was play.
And did you grow up in Carroll County?
No, I'm actually from Northern Virginia.
Okay.
Well, I'm actually from all over Virginia. I was born in Newport News.
Okay.
And then we moved up to Northern Virginia in the kind of late 80s. And I stayed up there until I graduated high school. I went to West Virginia University for my undergrad.
And did you study music in undergrad?
Yes,
Okay.
Music education.
Music education. So you mentioned the drums, you're a percussionist. Did you do exclusively percussion instruments all throughout middle school and high school?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. My mom can sing really well. My dad plays guitar, so I've picked up enough guitar to get in trouble. So I can do it at home when no one's watching, but I'm not sure I would do it in front of people.
For sure. Did your percussion experience, was it limited to like a traditional drum set, or what all did you do?
Well, my drum lessons were mainly on drum sets, so the private stuff I did. All the school stuff, I mean, it was concert band, marching band, a little bit of jazz band. So yeah, it was everything they could offer.
Right. Okay. Sure. So you have to explain some concepts to me and
Okay.
to some of my listeners because we're not as familiar. But can you talk about the difference between a jazz percussion instrument and maybe a concert or marching instrument?
Okay. Well, yeah, actually. Originally, they were marching bands and were in the military, so that's like a snare drum and maybe a person carrying a bass drum and a set of cymbals. And then there was orchestral percussion, which were those instruments but stationary. And then you could add like the timpani, the kettle drums, they would be in that as well. And that's very formal training music. So here's what's on the page, play what's on the page, and for a long time, percussion was just in the background. There wasn't much to it. But in the late 1800s, early 1900s, down in New Orleans, jazz was developing, but band leaders were too cheap to pay multiple people to play drums, so the drummers had to kind of build contraptions, which is where you get the term trap set. I don't know if you ever heard. Some people call a drum set a trap set. Okay. It's short for contraption, where one person had to do it all.
Okay.
And then it was like, okay, here's the song, play this rhythm to it, but everything else you just make it up,
figure it out,
kind of on your own.
Right. Okay.
So the drum set is more mixing a lot of like different cultures. You mix rhythms together, and you're covering the job of 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 or 5 people. So yeah, and jazz gives you a little more freedom to improvise and come up with things, but it's all important. All of it's great.
Yeah, I understand that jazz was popular within the civil rights movement, and a lot of African Americans use jazz as a way to express themselves.
Yes.
Is that a part of musical history that interests you?
Oh, well, I love it. I think music history is our country, and I think that's the one of the, and I hope this doesn't come across badly, because I mean slavery was a horrible thing. Right. I mean I think we can all agree that. For sure. But one of the great things that came out of it was the mixing of African and South American rhythms and musical forms with European that eventually led to blues and jazz, and that turned into everything we listen to nowadays. And I just love to hear. I can hear aspects of each of those cultures in all the music that we listen to now, and I think, that's one of the true melting pots of America is our music, because everything's in there. You just got to listen for it.
Yeah, for sure. That makes sense. So can you talk a little bit about what drum lessons look like? Are you sat in front of the drums to say, hey, play this rhythm until you have it perfect?
Well, at the beginning, here's your sticks, here's how to hold the sticks, and here's how to move your hands, keep a rhythm, keep a tempo. Right. And then after that, they'll teach you, okay, this is a basic rock and roll drum pattern on a drum set. And then you can go into more complicated versions of that, and then teach you different fills, which are the kind of like where they go around the drums. Okay. It's the thing that everybody loves about, the thing that everybody air drums to when they listen to a song. Right. And then you learn different styles. So if I'm playing a rock and roll song, it's going to be a little bit different than if I play a swing, like a jazz song, which is going to be different if I play like a Latin American, like a samba or something along those lines. So you're learning different rhythms, and the majority of it is coordination. It's like rubbing your stomach and patting your head. It's until you have the independence with all four limbs to be able to do whatever you want to do. But it's endless. I mean, there's just so much to do I know I will never conquer the instrument. It's just you can't. There's just too much to do, which is fine. That means I'll be busy until I can't anymore. But right, sure. Yeah, it's in stages, but it's not as hard as everybody thinks it is. Everybody, I can't do that. I can't do that. Yeah, you probably could. It just takes a little bit of time.
Yeah, I've tried picking up various instruments and have not succeeded.
Well, and sometimes it's the way it's taught. Right. I've had teachers who I connect with in a heartbeat, and I've also had teachers that we don't resonate with each other, and it kind of threw me off of wanting to learn. Yeah. So it just depends on how you approach it.
That makes sense for sure. Have you ever tried pitched percussion instruments like the glockenspiel?
Oh yes, that's a part of when you go to music school in college. You have to learn to play the bells and the vibraphone, the marimba, four-mallet marimba, timpani. It's everything. Right. They want you proficient on all of it.
Is that something that is used within the band here at the high school?
Yes, every day. Yes, we use it in marching band. We use it concert bands. Yeah, most things we play involve pitched percussion.
Okay, I didn't realize that. The glockenspiel, I'm aware of because it has kind of an internet infamy. The funny name.
Yes, the German for bells.
Yeah, exactly. So I've seen it around. I know what it sounds like. So that's why I ask.
Yes. And that's the one. As a percussionist, we probably shy away from. Not because we don't like it, but it's just loud. Right. There are times I'll play it and my ears will kind of fuzz out because it's just such a high metallic pitched instrument. It's just like, whoa, that's rough.
Yeah. Is it called timbre?
Yes.
Timbre.
Yes.
Yeah, the timbre is interesting for sure. We know you went to college for music education. When did you start to consider that as a career path?
I did I helped some friends of mine with their band camps over the summer. So I had some friends who had graduated who were band directors, and they needed help teaching their drum line. And I thought, okay, that's, I've got a lot of experience doing that. I'll give it a shot. And that hooked me. It just, you go and you get to work with the kids who want to be there, and they just soak up the information. And then next thing you know, they're doing well, and they're succeeding and improving, and you see the kind of the joy on their faces. Yeah. That's really where it hooked me.
For sure. Yeah. Did you go to college directly out of high school?
Yes. Yeah. I graduated, and then that fall I started at WVU.
What were some of the most memorable classes that you had at WVU?
Well, I loved all of my percussion classes. We had a steel drum group. There's a steel drum group there. The gentleman actually from Trinidad he didn't invent the steel drum, but he invented the modern way of how they are built, was there in Morgantown. So I got to learn a lot of the world percussion things at WVU. I wasn't the biggest fan of my music theory classes, but back then my brain couldn't wrap around it, but I really liked the teachers. They were great teachers. And then the education classes where they actually taught you how to teach the groups, I liked those too because I had really good teachers. They were just very personable and practical, and they just, they worked with you on everything you needed.
Did your curriculum at WVU cover any of the marching?
Yes, as a music major there, you had to do one semester of the marching band, which I don't know if it necessarily. I mean, you learned how to march and you learned how to do drill. There were some classes that taught us how to write drill for the field and how to arrange music for the band. But really, I mean, to be all honest, we were there for the football games.
Right.
Division I NCAA games is just, there's nothing like them.
It's crazy.
Yeah, they're a blast.
Did you march in high school?
I did.
Okay.
Yep. Actually marched in 8th grade.
Okay.
I was in middle school, and my band director was the same band director of the high school. My older sister was in the band, and he needed some percussionists, so he asked me to do it. And I did it from 8th grade all the way till I was a senior, and then I marched in college for the 4 years I was there. I marched a drum corps one summer, and then I came back and I was on staff with WVU's drumline for 2 years after that.
Wow, okay. Yeah, I know you had marched with the drum corps later on, and I was hoping to talk to you about that later
absolutely.
on in the interview, because I know that's pretty cool, and you actually had them come to the high school here.
I did, yes, I did.
A couple months ago, which was really cool. I came by and watched them. It was pretty neat. So we've talked about your percussion classes at WVU. You talked about you didn't like the music theory classes.
Yes.
I'm not musical, like I was telling you earlier, but I did rent a couple of books on music theory from the library just to try to get a sense of what's out there, what are the overall concepts that someone needs to understand. And I found that to be easier to do than learn how to play a guitar or play a violin.
Well, let me ask you this. Are you really good at math?
Yes.
That's why.
Yeah.
Music theory, it's the math part of music. And I am not great at math. Because I just don't understand it. My brain does not. I feel like I'm more of a creative person. Like if you put something in front of me and said, "Put this together," I can do that, or I can listen to things. But if you put a problem in front of me, I don't know. So early on in college, when I didn't really know a lot of the things I know now, as far as how the group and the instruments work together, theory was just over my head, and I really struggled, and I had to get a lot of help with it. I feel like working in the schools now and being in the music every single day, if I went back and took my theory classes, I'd be just fine, because I understand why it works the way it does. I see that in a practical application, but to put the formula in front of me as an 18-year-old, I was clueless.
Sure, yeah. And the book was very basic, I'm sure. It was nowhere close to the level that you were taking in college. It was just covering, this is a common time rhythm, C major, F sharp major, the different key signatures, all that. And
yes.
So it was very basic, and I think that part I could handle.
Yeah, and it's really interesting.
It is.
And I think if someone would have explained it to me in a way that my brain could have understood it back then, I would have gotten it, no problem. I just, the key signatures, for instance, back then blew my mind. I'm like, well, what is this? Why is this the way it works? But now I'm dealing with them every day. I understand it perfectly.
Right, yeah. I did struggle to grasp it at first, but when the book displayed a picture of a piano and showed me, when you're playing in D major, these are the keys you press, and this is why.
Right.
That's when I was like, oh, okay, this makes sense.
Right.
And it had another example on a guitar and then on a violin.
Correct, yeah.
Then it kind of started to click for me.
That's something I've actually thought about going back and doing online theory classes just to see if it's easier.
Right.
Just, if I ever had time to do that, I would.
Yeah. You graduate from WVU. What do you do next?
Well, I tried to get a teaching job in Pennsylvania, because Morgantown is it's like an hour from Pittsburgh. So it's really more Pennsylvania than it is West Virginia. Right. But I wasn't able to get a job right after I graduated. So I stayed up there, I think, for about a year. and I worked actually as a cook at Ruby Tuesdays for a while, which was a really good job.
Yeah.
But it wasn't, it wasn't what I wanted to do. So I talked to my dad, who was living back in Newport News, and he said, you can come and move in with me and look for a job down there, which I did for a few months. I think it was just for over the summer. Still couldn't find anything in the area. And then I got a call one day from the band director at Grayson and said, hey, we're looking for a percussion person, assistant band director. Would you be interested? Yeah. And I said, yeah, I'd be interested in anything, not realizing it was on the complete opposite side of the state.
Right.
So I drove out and did the interview, and they called and said, the job's yours if you want it. And so I uprooted and came out here and been here ever since.
Yeah. What was that like, moving across the state?
That was a culture shock.
Yeah.
I was not prepared for Southwest Virginia.
Yeah, Newport.
Not that it's a bad thing. I love Southwest Virginia. The people here are great. The culture here is beautiful. It's fantastic. It just moves at a little bit slower of a pace than the East Coast does, which now I love. Now when I go back to the East Coast, I can stay there a few days, but then I have to leave because I don't like that. And some of the sayings and things threw me, and just the lifestyle was different. But I got used to it very quickly, and now when I go places, people think I'm from Texas or I'm from one of the more southern states because I've kind of picked up a little bit of the twang from around the area. But I've been here 20 years. It's inevitable. Yeah,
talking to you, I didn't realize that you were from other parts of the state. I just kind of thought you grew up either here. I knew you went to WVU, so I wondered if you had maybe grown up in West Virginia. Or
no, just like and even though Norfolk and Hampton, that's all Virginia. It's
different.
It might as well be a different state.
Yeah,
it's completely different.
Yeah, me and my family, we have a joke that there's Virginia, and then there's Southwest Virginia.
Right.
Everything past Roanoke is Southwest Virginia, and we get ignored by the rest of the state, but we're very much aware that we are here.
Oh yeah, it's beautiful. The scenery here is, every time I come down 77 and I get to the bridge around the shot tower, that's one of the most beautiful scenes that you can get around here, and I know there's more like it. Yeah. So sure. I love it around here.
Yeah, it's great, for sure. So how long did you stay at Grayson?
I was there for 5 years.
5 years.
And it was great. I enjoyed it. I wanted my own program one day, and then Jeff Kleiber was the director here, and then he called me kind of at the end of the school year, I think beginning of the summer. It was like, hey, I got a job down in Raleigh. If you want, put your application in. So I did, and I came up and did the interview and got the job, and then here I've been.
Yeah. So that was around 15 years ago, probably?
Yep, so 2010, 2011 was my first year here.
What was that like, moving from an assistant to a director?
I thought I knew everything, and I learned very quickly that I didn't, which was humbling, but I think everybody should go through something like that, because that's how you grow. And I thought, everyone will love me here, and they didn't. And the kids did not, and that makes sense because Mr. Kleiber was a great director, and that's a hard thing to do, to fill somebody else's shoes after they've been here for a while. So I think I learned some things the hard way, and they learned some things the hard way, and eventually, I became the director here, and the kids kind of warmed up to me. But the first year or two, they were tough, and tough, and probably a lot because of the things that I was trying to change too much all at once, and I shouldn't have done that. I should have just kind of eased into it, but you live and learn.
And when you're talking about changes, is that changes within the classroom component of band or the marching component?
A little of both. Just I'm a little different. I have a different style of teaching than Mr. Kleiber did, and when I was younger, I was a lot. It's probably not a surprise to people who know me that I have a little bit of a short temper, a little bit. I'm passionate sometimes to a fault, and back then I did not realize how some of the things I was saying and doing were coming across. In my head, they seemed, this is great.
Sure.
But from an outsider's perspective, they were not. So I think that took a little of the kids getting used to me and me figuring out, hey, don't be that way. Right. Lighten up. It'll be okay.
Mm-hmm. And I assume at Grayson you worked mainly with the percussionists because you were the percussion assistant?
Yes, I did that mainly with the percussion, but I was also, I did a lot with the winds and brass. It was a really great learning experience. Yeah. A lot of things that I was not aware of, I was able to get in and experience and kind of experiment with. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was great 5 years. I enjoyed it.
I asked because you moved from, granted, a very large component of the marching band, but to the whole band that you direct.
Yes.
That must have been challenging just by itself.
It is, and there are still things I'm learning about the woodwinds and the brass, just being a percussionist, that I never experienced playing because I didn't have to worry about blowing air through a horn.
Right.
I just hit the drum and it makes a sound. So yeah, it took a lot of research and a lot of, just, okay, you're going to have to find this stuff out. And thankfully, all of my friends, all the colleagues I work with are, band directors we're there for each other. So if I had a question, I could ask somebody who played trumpet, like, hey, how does this work? What am I doing wrong? And they would ask me percussion questions. So we help each other out.
Yeah. Now, I assume, and this may be incorrect, that a lot of kids that enter your program are coming from a decent foundation because of middle school.
Yes. For the most part.
How many students do you have that are coming in the band their 9th or 10th grade year for the first time, and you have to teach them everything from scratch?
Not very many, and the only reason why is because it's very hard to get them caught up after that much time. Mm-hmm. Usually at the 6th and 7th grade level and 8th grade level, if they want to jump in, they'll have to do a lot of work on the side, but it's more possible to do it then. Right. But if someone were to say they took piano lessons and they've never been in band, but they want to come in, you could find an instrument for them to play. If they already know how to read the music and understand what it doesn't take as long.
Sure.
So it's really a case-by-case basis. But if somebody really wants to be a part of the group, we can find something for them to do. Yeah. We'll find something for them to do.
Yeah. I've noticed that there's a very diverse set of instruments within the band. I don't know all the names, but like you mentioned, you have the woodwinds and then the brass and then the percussionists, and then you have some people in the pit. Can you talk about what your favorite, and you can't say percussionist, section of the band is?
Oh, I don't think I have a favorite section. I love when they're all played correctly. I play in the Blacksburg Community Band right now, and there's instruments that just, like the low brass will have a feature, and they'll just play it the best they can, and it's just gorgeous to listen to. Or the trumpets will play something, and then the flutes and clarinets will play something. And it's just, as long as whatever they're playing is played well and with feeling, I love it all. I don't think I could pick a favorite. I just want to hear it all. I want to hear it all played just as beautiful as it can be played.
If someone came to you and said, you can never play the drums ever again, what instrument would you play?
Oh, well, after my mental breakdown, I think I would maybe keep working on guitar a little more professionally, and I've always wanted to go back and get piano. For some reason in college when we took our piano classes, it didn't work for me, but I think now if I went back, I could probably do a little bit better. But I would hope no one would ever tell me that.
Sure, yeah, for sure. Why the piano? It's an interesting change. I know a lot of pianos, the rhythm of playing the notes.
But and I think it's an instrument.
Piano can be considered percussion. So.
Yes, I guess it can.
So
be
maybe you can't pick
percussion.
piano.
Okay, so not piano, but definitely guitar.
Guitar, yeah.
I think I understand guitar. I love classical guitar playing, but there's just something about an electric guitar when if you ever listen to B.B. King or Clapton or any of the great guitar players, there's just something almost primal about how it makes you feel. It's just like that was meant to be a thing.
Yeah.
And it just no matter how bad a day you're having, if you hear a good blues song, it'll put you in a good mood.
Yeah. Have you listened to the band Polyphia?
I know of them, but I have not listened to them.
They use almost exclusively, probably exclusively, electric guitars
Okay.
and electric basses within their band, and they have a really good drummer who, I don't really know what this means, but I've read that he creates a lot of space with his music.
Yes.
And that improves just the sound of the whole band.
Yes, actually, when you create space, you're actually playing less, which is, you would think would be very easy to do, but it's not. It's very difficult to do. To play less and make it feel good and add to the music, that's a very difficult thing to do. Most young drummers and even older drummers, the more notes, the better. But after a while, that gets in the way. So, but yeah, I'll have to check them out. That sounds really interesting.
Yeah, they're really good. I know a couple of your band students are fans of them. They introduced me to them. So they're a good band. You should definitely check them out.
Okay, yeah, I will.
Whenever I read that comment online, I started listening to their songs a little bit more, and I started listening to the cymbals and some of the deeper notes that they were playing. And so most of it you don't even hear the first time through.
Right.
And it's only on the 10th, 20th time that you hear the song that you hear the small note here or there that just completely makes the song.
Yes.
It's very interesting how that works.
Yes. As I've gotten older, I appreciate the subtleties in music. So if it's just something in the background, like you were saying, something in the background that's not sticking out, but one day your ear picks up on it, and you're like, oh wow, I never heard that before. Right. I love that. I think that's one of the true artistic parts of music, is to be able to do that.
For sure. One part of the marching band that completely mesmerizes me is the organization. I guess the choreography. I don't know if that's the proper term. How do you get a group of unlike individuals to all work in unison?
That's a question I've been asking for a long time. I think that's, the marching band's volunteer, and I think that's a big part of it. So, they're there because they want to be there. Yeah. And, you just start with the basic movements. Okay, this is how we're going to move our feet and support our body and support our instrument. And from there, you kind of write the drill on the field to suit the music. I know a lot of bands nowadays will use microphones. I don't use them as much just because all that electronic stuff outside it can be a pain.
Yeah.
But if a section has a feature, you generally move them closer to the sideline. If there's a big moment in the music where there's a big, kind of like the apex of a part, sometimes you'll stand still during that and raise your horn up. So there's really just little tricks that you do, but you get the kids excited about it, and they love it, and they get started, and then you just do it a couple sets every day, and next thing you know, you've got a song on the field, and you add another song, and then you finish it off and go out and compete, and just it's a lifestyle, and you work so hard with it. By the end of it, you're exhausted, but come February, you start getting an itch again. I'm like, okay, when's this going to start? When are we going to do this again? Yeah. So it's a lot like athletics. Right. You just start with the fundamentals, and then you build from there.
I just imagine you having almost like a football pad where you draw lines.
That's exactly what it is. Okay. I've got a computer program that has a football field on it, and it's graph paper, and each step is calibrated into the program, and you just tell them, okay, this is what I want this shape to go do and morph into this, and they'll tell you, okay, that's a really big step size. Are you sure you want to do that? And yeah, it's just experimenting, see what works, what doesn't.
And I know the color guard is also part of the band.
Yes.
How do you integrate their show within yours?
Well, thankfully, I have an amazing color guard coordinator, Nikki Anderson, and she went to school at Grace, and she was in their color guard. So I give her the music, and she writes the routine. Okay. Because if I did that, we would be horrible. I don't have any experience with that. And then I write the drill, and I'll sketch it, and then I'll give it to her and say, okay, where do you want to put the girls, or not even girls? It could be guys too. Yeah. That's just kind of old school. You're used to saying girls, but it's men and women. Yeah. and she'll say, okay, I'd like to do them here. Is there any way you could scoot this group over, and I'd like to do something here? So we coordinate together, and then Mr. Farmer, who is the band director at the middle school, he helps me as well. So we all kind of work together, and he'll see something like, hey, why don't we do this? And we'll change it, and if it works really well, we'll keep it. So it's like a three-pronged approach to it. And it works. We've been very successful with it.
For sure. On the announcements, almost every week in August through November, I hear the band won excellence or supreme category at a competition. Can you talk what makes a marching band good?
Well, you all want to march the same. You want your marching technique to be the same. And the goal is to make it look like you're gliding across the field. So we roll our feet a lot. And then the spacing between the people needs to stay consistent. So they have to be consistent with their drill, and then they obviously have to be able to play their music with a good sound. Yeah. You can go out there and just blast as loud as you want, but that's not really a pleasing sound to the ear. So it's almost like a mixing board where you raise the sliders up and down. You want to do that. And then a lot of it comes into the show design. Does it emotionally connect with the audience? Is it telling a story, or is it reaching out to them in some way? So it's a lot of different things. And the biggest thing I tell the students, it's all subjective. Right. It's not like an athletic event where you can see them score the points. They made it across the goal line. They got the ball to go through the hoop, or you can see, okay, yeah, they won. Sometimes you can go out and have a great day, and then the band before you or after you will have a great day, and the judges will just like their show a little bit better. Yeah. And that's okay. Art, unfortunately, I don't like competing with art, because art is not meant to be a competition. Art is meant for human enjoyment. But I also like, we want to go out and see how we're doing. Right. So I get competitive with it. I want us always to do our best. And if we don't, that's when I'll get disappointed. But if we do our best and another group in our class or at the show does their best and they do better, I love that. Because it's just, we're all out there doing the same thing. Yeah, for sure. So they judge you on how you move and how you play and just the overall effect of the show.
Definitely. Last year I went to one of the band competitions at Pulaski County High School, I think, and one of the schools, I don't remember which, had this really interesting show where they had almost like a jail cell, and they had their color guard dance between the jail cell and then use the flags and just emphasize the jail cell, and their song has something along the lines that went with their show. I thought that was a really neat just integration of everything, and it worked really well.
Yeah, props on the field have become a really big thing if you do it right. Sometimes, especially living in Southwest Virginia in the fall, we get a lot of wind, which I've been to many competitions and watching other bands' props sail through the parking lot just because the wind picks them up. But I don't use a lot of props. I have some in the past, but if you can find props that will help you translate the idea to the crowd, they're a lot of fun.
For sure.
And they can also help frame the band. I mean, our band's not exactly the biggest in the world, and the football field is large, so if you can put some props in the background to frame them in, it'll make them look bigger.
Definitely. So I understand that within the public school district here, band used to be required in middle school, and that maybe inadvertently created a larger funnel of kids who did band in high school.
Yes.
Do you think that it would be beneficial to require band or chorus in the middle school like they used to?
Yes. I personally do. My personal opinion, I think every student should have an art class. I think art helps us understand different cultures and different people, and it kind of opens your mind. However, I also understand with technology improving the way it is, there's so many more opportunities for students to be involved in. Like, I'm good friends with Jennifer Leonard over at the middle school who does the robotics, the Lego, and I'm jealous that that wasn't around when I was in school, because I would have just gone crazy with that. So I understand there are so many options for these students to pick from, and not all of them are going to want to be in band. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. I don't want to get rid of all the other things, but I would love to see more kids in band. I'd love to see them, and in chorus, and in theater, and art. Whatever. It doesn't matter. Just some kind of art. But then there's some that's not their thing.
Sure.
And that's that's okay.
Yeah.
It's not your thing.
My mom was one of those students who was required to take it when she was in middle school, and she said she was terrible. Like, parents drove her out of the house every time she tried to play the trumpet and all that. I wish I would have been able to do band in middle school, but I felt like I missed something. There's that feeling inside me that there was an opportunity that I could have potentially been good at something and really enjoyed it, but I wasn't able to, and that's disappointing.
I can see that, and I understand that. Thankfully, with music and art, anything, it's never too late.
Yeah.
Never too late.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, with athletics, there's a limit on when the body says, "Look, I can't compete with the younger people anymore." But even with that, there are still places people can play sports as old as they want to be. But with the internet and technology the way it is, you can still learn. It's never too late.
Yeah, and I've tried to use that attitude. Like I told you before we started recording, I've attempted to learn. It hasn't went super well.
And that's okay, but that's the fun part.
Right, it is.
You get to experiment with it and find what works and what doesn't.
And it's a learning experience for sure. But I wanted to talk about your time in the drum corps, because when they came and visited, I was blown away.
Yes.
And I thought that was the neatest thing ever. How did you get started with that?
Well, drum corps is the highest level of marching band in the world. And it's got a very unique history that goes back to the 60s and 70s. But by the time I was introduced to it in the late 80s, early 90s, it was definitely... It was a thing. It was very, very impactful on my musical career. Right. My father was in the military, so I kind of grew up with that. No, it wasn't hard on us to the point where like he was a drill sergeant, but things were in line,
right.
And that's kind of my personality. I like things organized and in line, and drum corps is definitely that. It's you do your job, you do the best you can, and it's just an incredibly high level of musicianship.
Yeah.
So I auditioned in the fall of 1999. Myself and three other friends from college, we drove up to try out, I think up in New Jersey, for the cadets drum corps. And since they were so good, I mean, they're still great, but we didn't make that, but there was another corps up there, the Crossmen, that were looking for people. So we checked that out and we liked it.
Yeah.
And then in May, after school let out, we moved into, I can't remember, we were somewhere in Pennsylvania, some camp. And we spent 4 weeks there, pretty much it was like boot camp, every day, 13 hours a day, learning how to play how they wanted us to, march how they wanted us to, learning the music. And then after that, we loaded up, I think we had 4 charter buses and an equipment trailer and a food truck.
Wow.
We loaded up and we toured the country, from Chicago to the East Coast. We didn't go past Chicago, but we just toured every day, and we were at a new school every day practicing, kind of like what you saw this summer. There's a new school every day. If you got to the school on time, you would sleep as much as you could in the gym. If not, you slept on the bus, and it's like musicians do on the road when they're touring. You were on the road all summer long, and you got to know each other, and the show developed, and if things didn't work, they would change it, and the next day you'd have to implement that change in the performance. And so it was a high stress environment, but it also taught you a lot about yourself. Okay, what can you handle? When things get hard, how are you going to deal with it? And I made a lot of lifelong friends, just a lot of great people.
So when they're on tour, do they do performances for the public?
Yes, there are shows. They're kind of like band competitions, but people come to see them, and the judges for Drum Corps International judge every single one of them, and they keep track over the summer. And then at the end of the summer, it used to be they would pick a place to have championships. Now they always do it at the Indianapolis Colts Stadium because it's in the middle of the country.
Right.
Everybody can get there easily.
Yeah, yeah.
We did our championships in Maryland at the University of Maryland Stadium.
That's close.
And then they do, the quarterfinals. And so if you score high enough, you move on to the finals. If you score high enough, you move on to your semifinals. Then you go to the finals. And I think we were like 7th or 8th out of 12,
Right.
which is, only one's going to win.
Right.
Obviously. Actually, that's not true. The year I marched was the last year they tied for first place, which that does not go over well. When you put in that much work, you want to see a clear winner.
Yeah.
But we were 7th or 8th, I think, and that's but it's more about the experience, and I will remember that until the day I die. It was amazing.
And is that something that's only for college students, or is it?
I think the ages are 14 to 21.
Oh wow, so 14-year-olds.
Yeah, 14. Yeah, we had a 14-year-old, and I wouldn't necessarily have a 14-year-old do it, just because you're on the road with older kids, and I don't think 14-year-olds should be in that environment.
Sure.
Not that it was bad, but especially nowadays. But yeah, some younger kids do it. There are some younger corps, smaller corps that don't meet as much that younger kids can get started in. But the rough age was around 18 to 21.
Yeah. When they came into town, I saw a bunch of posts on Facebook. It was like, oh, the drum corps in town, and people came to the high school to see. And I was here working at the high school when they were here, and I walked into your room to take down your projector, and there were people on the floor. So
Yes.
I turned around and went the other
the
direction.
drivers were sleeping in here, and that's, I guess that's law they can only drive for so long, and then they have to have a certain amount of rest.
Yeah.
So that's why we let them in here, just to get away from everybody.
Yeah, but it was really interesting, and I was at the middle school some that week as well, and you could hear them at the middle school. They were loud.
Yes, they're big, and they play. Everybody in the group they play.
Yeah, and when I later went down to the football field to watch them in person, when I had a chance to, and you were down there along with one of your band students, and you were pointing out things that they could copy from the drum corps to improve their playing. I thought that was really neat, and I could see what you were talking about.
Yes, yeah, and it's the same with anything. You look at a baseball player is going to watch a professional player, and okay, there's their fundamentals. Emulate that. Emulate the people who do it at a professional level. So it's just fun to see it in person. And I told them if they wanted to come back, because this year was kind of short notice. They something fell through. But I said, if you want to put us on your tour schedule so we can plan it out and have everything ready, that would be a lot of fun, because I think more people could come out and see it.
Yeah,
so I haven't heard from them yet, but hopefully soon.
So this is your 14th year at the high school, 15th?
Yeah, this is my 15th year.
What are your plans for the band program moving forward in the next 15 years?
I just want to keep improving it and building it. I think, COVID hit everybody hard.
Yeah.
Not just band programs, athletic programs. It hit everybody hard. So in some ways, we're still kind of rebuilding from that. But I just, I'd like to just keep growing the band as much as I can, and introducing the kids to as much music and culture as I can. And just having a safe place for them to be. Yeah. That's one of my main goals with the group. I want to play well, I want to do well, but in the end, if this is a safe place you can come to where you can be yourself, and it's a bright spot in your day, then I've done my job correctly.
Yeah. I do know that all the band students I know are very tight-knit.
Very much.
Everyone knows each other, they love each other. It's a good group, and I definitely think you've accomplished that.
Yes, I urge that. I'm like, you don't have to be best friends, but you better respect each other, because we have to work together. Right. And I think that's something we have to use in the outside world. You're going to have to work with people that you may not like on a personal level, but when you show respect and you work together and you understand people's differences, it makes the world a much better place.
And there is something about just working hard with someone
Mm-hmm.
that builds that respect. Every day this summer, you guys were out there in the sun, 90 degrees,
Yep.
marching, playing the instruments, and people, all the students were there with each other. And even if you don't like the guy next to you, that does do something.
Yeah, it does, and you don't really appreciate that until later.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
You don't, because there's days even as the directors were like, oh man, I would really love to be at home
Right.
in the air conditioning right now. But when you go out like we did at when we went to John Battle, and not only did we get a superior rating for the assessment we were going for, we got small group grand champion. All that work pays off, and I tell them, that's worth more than any material item you can get. If you buy something that you like, that can always be taken away from you.
Yeah.
When you go out and work and you earn something and you create a performance in a moment, that's yours forever. No one can touch it. It's yours. You've done it. So I try to show them that side of working hard and succeeding.
Yeah, definitely. And after marching season ends, you guys still have concerts throughout the year.
Yes, we actually have one tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night, really?
Yep.
Can you talk about how the preparation for marching season is different than the preparation for concerts?
Well, I would say concerts easier because you don't have the weather factors. You don't have the outside factors. And then outside you have to play very full all the time because the sound just goes out.
Yeah.
In here, the sound bounces around and it's very acoustic, so you do have to change the volume you play. You have to change how you listen. So there are some little factors that you have to change, but a lot of it's very similar. It's a little easier because they're not moving. They don't have to worry about marching and playing at the same time. But they still have to support the notes and do all the things we do outside.
And something that's interesting to me is the drum major, how they direct the band with keeping time and then pulling up certain sections and letting down others. Can you talk about the role that the drum major plays in the marching band?
Yeah, the drum major and conductors.
Conductors,
it's nonverbal communication. So the pattern is just keeping the tempo. And then usually with left hand, they'll bring it up to get louder and cue people in. So, okay, now go ahead and start. And if the band is in a perfect world, the band wouldn't need a conductor because everyone's playing perfectly. But that doesn't happen. So if something were to happen where the tempos are adjusting, you can look up to the conductor or the drum major and see, okay, this is where we need to be. So it's a big leadership role.
Yeah.
And it's a very important part, but it's another one of those subtle things that unless you're watching it, you don't realize what's going on because it's not directed at the crowd.
Right.
It's directed at the band.
Yeah. In marching season, they're always on the pedestal and you can kind of see them doing their thing, so it's easier. But I don't think I've really ever noticed the conductor at one of y'all's concerts before.
Well, I have a podium. I have just a small leveled podium because I'm tall. I'm 6'1", so. But I have seen others that have taller podiums. If the band's bigger, you want to be up.
See everything.
Yeah, so they can see you. You just want to be visible.
Yeah, makes sense. So, say in 15 years you're retired from teaching.
Okay.
But you still want to do music.
That will be true. I will still.
What will your plan be?
Well, I'm actually in a little rock band right now with some of my band director buddies. And we play some gigs. We play some songs that we like. We learned growing up, and just music we love to listen to.
Is that the Blacksburg?
Yeah, we've got. That's the Blacksburg Concert Band.
Okay.
Which is directed by one of the professors at Virginia Tech.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that I love doing because it's like being in school, but I get to play instead of direct. But this is more like rock and roll, stuff that we will play in Withville.
Gigs and stuff.
Yeah, if we played before a Virginia Tech football game one time.
Really?
So it's just us, just following our passions and being silly and just having a good time. But yeah, that. Maybe get into teaching private lessons. That's hard to do now with as busy as I am.
Yeah.
But I always, I always tell the kids, music's not ours.
Yeah.
Yes, I played the drums for a while. I can play it at a certain level, but none of the things I know are mine to keep. It's my responsibility to pass them on to someone else because it's here for all of us. So I teach private lessons and just help out wherever I can. But definitely get out and do some things that I haven't been able to do. Teaching is great, but it sometimes can limit being able to get out and see things.
Sure.
But that's okay. I mean, that's a sacrifice I've made gladly, and I will continue to do it. But but I will be involved with music until I'm no longer here.
Yeah. So you talked about passing down the art. Can you talk about who some of your most influential mentors were?
Well, my first drum teacher ever, his name is Toby Fairchild, and I'm friends with him on Facebook still. He's a very big influence in my life. A lot of my friends from college that, I went into college, I was a big fish in a small pond. And then when I got to college, I realized there were a lot bigger fish, which kind of intimidated me at first until I realized it's cool, everybody, we're all here to play. And I became really good friends with them. I take online lessons now from a gentleman out in California.
Oh, yeah?
And I actually got out to California 2 years ago to do a week-long camp with him. And he's a very big influence on me, especially not just in the playing, but in the educational approach. It's not life or death. You just as long as you're having fun and improving, it's worth it. My band director, who was my band director from 6th grade until I graduated, and unfortunately he passed away from cancer last year.
I'm sorry.
But he'll always be one of my biggest influences. And my parents and my family, all of us were involved in it one way or another. So yeah, they're always my biggest cheerleaders. And my fiance's a huge fan of the band, and she, after the season was over, she's like, "Let's sit down and listen to shows for next year." And I'm like, we can, but I need a break.
some
But
time.
yeah, no, but no, let's do it. And her family, she was in marching band in high school, so her family's very supportive. So just in the community, just everybody who loves here in the group, that's why I keep going.
I have noticed that band students from other schools are very receptive to band students from other schools. So the Galax kids love to talk to the Carroll kids who are in band and vice versa. And I think that's really neat.
Yeah, a band kid is a band kid no matter where you're from.
Yeah.
And choir kids are the same, theater kids are the same, art kids are the same. We relate to each other. We understand. And it's not always the case, so it's not concrete, but a lot of times band kids are the kids who aren't athletes. It takes a lot of motor skills and physical abilities to play a sport. And I will be the first to admit, I don't have that. And I don't have that, but I've kind of found my people with the bands. Not that athletes aren't musicians and not that they aren't friendly. I don't want anybody to think that, but band people, we're just weird. We're just weird together, and we understand our weirdness. We thrive off of it.
Yeah, sure. As we're wrapping up, I do have a couple quick questions. The first one is, what advice would you have to someone who is who's older, maybe my age or in their 20s and 30s, who wants to learn music?
Find someone who you can relate to. Not just because someone has a high degree in music doesn't mean that you'll understand how they teach. Find someone that you can understand and learn it to find the joy in the art. Don't learn it to be the best. Don't learn it to go win a competition. Don't, the dream of becoming like a Taylor Swift. That is so few and far between. And I wish I could do that, but I mean, it just doesn't happen. Play the music because it makes you happy. And if you're doing something that doesn't make you happy, don't do it. Play it, do what you want to do. If you want to learn the easiest music in the world, and that's where you want to stop because it makes you happy, then you've succeeded. But if you want to keep, and just keep going, and the great thing about it is it doesn't go bad. So unfortunately, sometimes I have to I'm not able to practice on my own. I have to put it down for a little bit, but I can always come back to it. It will always be there for you when you need it.
Yeah, good answer. My second question is, what does it mean to you to be a musician?
It's my whole existence. I mean, it's what gets me through the good, bad times. It's everything to me. I mean, if I did not have music, I don't know where I would be. I think I'd be in a very bad place.
And then my last question, it's kind of related to the first one, but what advice would you have to someone my age who's just graduating high school and they don't know what they want to do with their life?
Don't feel pressured. I mean, there's so much to do. Take your time. Not saying sit around and do nothing, which I know you would not do. Yeah, that's not you. But take your time. You do not. If you have a 5-year plan and you can stick to it and that works, that's great. But a lot of people who have those plans, about year 2, they realize, okay, this isn't exactly what I thought it was, and that's okay. You've got a long life. Do what makes you happy. Don't do something because someone wants you to or because you think you have to. If you don't like it, don't do it. Find what makes you happy.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Mr. Farina.
You're welcome.
Greatly appreciate your time today, and I learned a lot.
All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And anytime you need me, I'm here.
Yeah, well, thank you.